Tito Puente has spent over 20 years in the music business. He's recorded close to 100 albums, received 3 Grammys, and recently appeared in Woody Allen's film Radio Days. A radio personality and DJ in her own daily life at Wado, Gilda Miros is here to help us talk about what's happening in Hispanic music. Bienvenidos, Gilda y Tito. Welcome to Hispanic Horizons.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
Tito, tell us first what's happening with your music these days.
Well, these days?
Yes.
Well, we've been around a long time, as you know. We've been playing our music from the mambo days. Now they call it salsa, which is a combination of all the music put together. But it's becoming very popular, and our Latin music is getting more recognition nowadays than it used to be. We do a lot of traveling around the world, and east over to Japan, all over the United States. And I'm very happy to be one of the pioneers still involved with it.
You have to say he's a doctor. He's a doctor of music as of last week.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Now they call me Dr. P. I don't know what that stands for. I've been called a lot of names, you know, Dr. P.
That's the first time that you have received a...
Oh, yes, of course. In fact, the first Puerto Rican has had that honor in the State University of New York. And they did a lot of research on me, and finally decided that they were going to give me this award, and I'm very honored. So.
You know, Gloria Estefan just said that percussion was very important in Latin music. And here we have the king, El Rey, of percussion, who I think has been a crossover. You don't like the word, but the crossover you did like 30 years ago. Can I say that?
I'm on my way back, sure. I crossed over a long time ago.
We still stay at over 20 years, right?
Okay, all right, 20 years, sure. But our music is well accepted throughout Europe, especially now, because we have no bilingual problem with our music. Like Hilda says, the percussion is what really outstands in our music. We always try to maintain it from the roots and the culture of our music, keeping that rhythm going. And even if we have a Latin jazz ensemble, you play jazz tunes or intricate harmonies of jazz by maintaining our Latin rhythms, typical rhythms. That's what the people love, and the combination is good.
We were talking about before, Hilda, about paying the dues. We see the younger generation of Latin artists making it in an easier way. You've seen Tito in the last 10 or 15 years crossing over in a very strong way. Perhaps you can share with us about how hard it's been, the effect of your breaking through, like we say.
Well, of course, we need people like Hilda also, who has a wonderful program. She plays the right kind of music on the air, where the young people can listen to it. Of course, her music is very worldwide, you know, more of Latin America, also involves the Caribbean area, all kinds of music, which is very interesting nowadays because we have a lot of people here from all different countries of Latin America here in the United States. So that's very good for our young generation to know of the different type music, because when I play special engagements, I have to have my Colombian music, Venezuelan music, tangos, Brazilian music, all kinds of music, including my own Latin music, which makes me like an international orchestra.
The market has changed completely.
You need it.
It's a different approach in programming and as far as performers are concerned. But, you know, going back to what you did so many years ago, your performers and people that were pioneers in this field didn't have the exposure or the glamorized or the videos that would help promote them into another market. And this is, it's a social phenomenon what's happening now with all the videos, and there's a network, commercial aspect of promoting an artist which didn't exist when Tito started. Am I right?
True, right.
And this helps. Also, you find that the Midwest is feeling Miami Sound Machine and Tito Puente because they're exposed to so many Hispanics where before it wasn't like that. There's Hispanics all over the place.
Sure.
And now their presence is an awareness so that it's easier for our music to be programmed.
Do you feel that the American musicians are incorporating your influence and that of other Latin artists into their own developments?
Well, for years, our percussive instruments have been used by rock and roll bands and discos, see? But they never gave us recognition for those instruments. They've always used conga drums, timbales, bongos, shakers, tambourines, cowbells, all kinds of Latin instruments. But as of lately, there is more recognition going to Latin percussion instruments. And I feel that with the percussive end of it mixed with the rock and all that gives it more excitement also.
Also, there's a lot of shows, recordings, video clips being done with Latin artists and American musicians together, combined, like the one that you did recently.
Oh, yes, I've done quite a few of them. Sheila is a beautiful example. She's a very talented young lady there. And I've done a lot of the big television shows, and I do a lot of concerts throughout the country and the world now, where Latin music, even in the jazz concerts, we have what we call a Latin tinge, and it gives it for excitement. And we have a lot of Latin representations all over the world, in either in army bases or universities or conservatories, and they want to have a little Latin in any of those jazz concerts. So I'm very happy to be involved with that, too.
We're happy to have you with us. The lyrical voice of Irma Estelle Laguerre, creating a song from her role as Lady Chiang in The King and I, starring the late Yul Brynner. From Puerto Rico via Siam to Broadway, Irma, please tell us how your talent has traveled so far.
Thank God for my mother that brought us here in 1959. I wouldn't be here today. And then I went to, when I was here, I decided to study music at a very early age. I was always interested in classical music. I can't ever think of not ever wanting to study that music, even though I liked everything else. And I danced everything, but I wanted...
That started here, or...?
And that started in New York City.
New York City.
In New York City. I went to Turtle Bay, and then from Turtle Bay, my mother just kept finding money from any place you can get money to try to get me voice lessons, and from there I went to performing arts school, music and art, and then from music and art, it was Bronx Community College, because I wasn't sure whether I can actually go to Manhattan School of Music. I wasn't quite secure yet. And then I decided, why not? I'll try it. And then I went and I got in, and that was it, and here I am today.
We're glad that you did.
Yeah, so easy.
Overnight success like this.
You know, we were discussing before that your mother is Puerto Rican.
Yes.
And your father was Aztec.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was.
And the richness of that combination in tradition and culture, it's something special that you have to give to this country and to your art.
True, quite true.
And that's part of, I think, the success story now, Carlos and Tito, that each one of us has so much within from the history and the talent sort of manifest.
Yeah, it's a rich history.
Your mother is from Aguadilla, Puerto Rico?
My mother's from Aguadilla.
And your father was from?
My father, I'm not sure. He may have been born in Puerto Rico, or else he may have been born in Mexico.
In Mexico.
We never discussed that.
You're always taken as an Asian, though, right?
All the time. I think it's that whole Indian influence that makes me look somewhat Asian. Or Indonesian, actually.
It's interesting how the 300 million Hispanics, or I don't know how many we are, but we come in all different sizes and shapes and types and everything.
Oh, yes.
And we have so much in common, and people outside of our environment don't really understand how come we are so different and at the same time so much alike.
They don't understand, but one day they will.
Yes, they're beginning to. Sometimes you get, do you get typecast?
All the time. It never fails. As an Asian actress.
Okay.
Or every time I go for a Hispanic role, they look at me and they tell me, they say, where are you from? I said, from Puerto Rico. But you don't look Puerto Rican. Speak. Talk to me. So I speak and they say, you don't sound like a Puerto Rican.
Right.
I said, okay.
Your interest in music and acting, does that create a problem? Like if, say there is some talented young people watching the show, which way should they go? Should they try to go for both at the same time?
I always tell everyone, I tell this to my nephew, who's starting to get into the business right now, that it is important for him to learn everything. to learn music, dance, drama, theater, as much as he can possibly get. It's very important. You never know. You need it all. You need it all. You have to be able to move well, be able to sing, you have to know music, you have to know how to play an instrument. It's so helpful. The more you know, the better you are.
And even if you're well-trained in music, you still enjoy, like I saw you dancing a little bit to Tito Puente.
Of course I do. I was raised with that kind of music.
Hispanics, we have so many different types of music, dance, traditional dances and music of South America, Latin America, in the Caribbean area. You can go from the classical to the popular music, all kinds of different rhythms in Brazil and Venezuela and Colombia. It's so beautiful. They all speak the same language, too.
Yes.
Spanish, except Brazil called Portuguese, but they speak Spanish, too, there.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so beautiful, Hispanics together.
I wanted to mention, I'm sorry,
Sí, no,
Tito
okay.
Puente he is with you in the training for the musician. He's always sponsoring, and he has a scholarship, and there was a big thing that happened at the Apollo Theater a couple days ago. Do you want to mention that, Tito?
Well, I've had my scholarship fund now for about 6 years, since 1980, and my reason for having a scholarship is because our young people have no incentive to continue studying unless they see someone up there pushing them. And they look up to me and they say, gee, there's Tito. I was born in Harlem, poor parents. My mother used to pay 25 cents a lesson. Grew up, learned. I went to the Conservatory of Music and all that. I'm still a street musician. I play for everybody, like you call. But I give them an incentive by giving them a scholarship where they can continue their studies, like you say. They have to learn everything. So that we need producers, we need arrangers, we need singers, we need actors, we need everything of Hispanic descent, anyway. And it's beautiful to give them encouragement.
Dr. Clara E. Rodriguez is a professor of sociology at Fordham University's College at Lincoln Center. She is the author of 10 books, including Heroes, Lovers, and Others. She is the recipient of numerous research and teaching awards. Most recently, the American Sociological Association's Award for Distinguished Contributions to Research in the field of Latina/O studies, and she was designated Distinguished Lecturer by the Organization of American Historians. She has also been a visiting scholar at the Russell Sage Foundation and a senior fellow at the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of American History. Previously, she was the Dean of Fordham University's College of Liberal Studies. She has written over 50 articles on Latinos in the United States and is co-author of The Culture and Commerce of Publishing in the 21st Century. Dr. Rodriguez has also been a consultant to a number of television shows and documentaries, most recently Dora the Explorer and Sesame Street. She was also elected to a 3-year term on the American Sociological Association's Governing Council and was selected as one of the 100 most influential Hispanics in the nation by Hispanic Business October 2007. She was also appointed to the Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee for a 3-year term by the Postmaster General.
To know, I've been a performer most of my life in different facets. And at this point in my life, I was putting together an audiobook which I finished. And I was still doing research on Latinos that had been in the movies, in the theater, recording artists. And in my research in New York City, because I had been living in another state, I found the Library for the Performing Arts. I said, oh God, I have to go there and see what they have in the catalog. So I was looking for the Good Neighbor policy, the movies, the musical movies in Hollywood when you had Cugat and Desi Arnaz and all these Latins that were internationally known, but I was also looking for recording artists. So I looked up CBS, NBC, and I must congratulate the Library for the Performing Arts. They have a wonderful gold mine of information. Anyway, I bumped into a book in the catalog, and I asked for it. Heroes, Lovers, and Others. The Stories of Latinos in Hollywood by Dr. Clara E Rodriguez. I loved it, asked for it, picked it up, took it home, and read it. It hooked me on to something greater than what I had thought. She talks about history and how performers are affected by what's going on in the world and in history and in politics. She goes back to the silent screen era. And I bumped into a picture of a performer in 1911, Myrtle Gonzalez, Beatriz Michelena, silent screen stars. I said, my God, this is beautiful. I never imagined. So I wrote to her at Fordham, and she answered. And I had been putting together this show, Latin Icons Past and Present. I said, she could be the godmother to this show because she's a fountain of information and inspiration. This is not for me, this show, or for her. It's for future generations, our children. They must know their ancestry, their legacy, their history, and feel proud and do. That's about it. Then, in the things that I was bringing in from another state, I found a book, Puerto Ricans Born in the USA. Signed to me, 1989, by Clara E Rodriguez, the same person that I had found in the library. I said, I do believe in God sent. I do believe in cause and effect. And I do believe that I was led on the right track. And today she is the godmother to this series, Latin Icons Past and Present. Dr. Clara E Rodriguez. She has been the first dean at Fordham University.
Youngest.
Why?
Yeah.
Youngest? What year? And how did you get there?
I guess it's happenstance. I got my degree at Washington University and came to New York and actually started to work at Lehman College. And I sort of quickly became the chair of the Department of Puerto Rican Studies at the time. And then I was asked to apply to the deanship. So it all just sort of happened really fast. I think actually for women like me at the time, there was a tendency to track us into administration. And I still have had lots of opportunities to move in that direction, but at least in terms of the way that I do administration, it was difficult for me to do research, teach, and administration. Some administrators are able to do that. So even though I accomplished that, it wasn't what and I enjoyed doing it, and I feel proud of what I was able to do while I was dean. I really thought that I wanted the 10-month contract with my summers off so I could do my writing, so I could spend some time with my children. And so for me, it wasn't something that I really was striving for, to become an administrator. It's something that people said, oh, she's good at that. You know, let's have her do it, or let's have her. And that's actually been something that has continued throughout my career. But I really have tried to stay away from it.
And you're still teaching?
Yes, oh yes, very much,
At
very
Fordham.
intensely. Yes, and teaching very intense. I teach at Fordham at Lincoln Center in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, and teaching at Fordham is fairly intensive.
It must be.
We have a lot of student attention.
Doctor, but a Puerto Rican girl
Uh-huh.
from the Bronx.
Absolutely. A proud Puerto Rican girl.
I am also
From
from the
the
Bronx,
Bronx, uh-huh.
and I'm very proud of it. So many obstacles,
Uh-huh.
and you've achieved. You're the example. We need icons. We need examples, good examples. But you're also an author. You have over 10 books written. And this book, this one is fascinating. This is when I met you. I interviewed you on radio. Then this is when you were starting to write? This is not your first book, is it?
That is my first. Well, actually, my first book was my dissertation, which was published as an academic book by a small press. This was the first book that I think I had a party for, because I always say, I think of you, you refer to me as a madrina, and I think of books as equivalent to baptisms.
Oh, yes.
Where you know you have to go, you have to celebrate, right? So it was the first book that I had a book party for.
This book, when did you give birth to this book?
That book started, I was a fellow, a senior fellow at the Smithsonian, and that's where I began to get interested in this kind of history that people didn't know very much about. And I started to muck around in their archive center, and I got more and more interested as I discovered, one, how little they had, and two, how much they had at the same time, how much they had that I didn't know very much about. So that was what got me interested in doing an intensive look at this history of Latinos in Hollywood. But I had actually done before that, I think, a book that's called Latin Looks, Images of Latinas and Latinos in U.S. Media. I've always looked at U.S. media, English language media, as opposed to Spanish language media, just because it's a huge field and you have to draw a perimeter somewhere. And so as a result of doing that book, which was an edited collection, and I wanted to do that because teaching at Lincoln Center, Fordham Lincoln Center, I realized that so many of my students were interested in the media and at the same time very influenced by the media, but not very aware of what they were taking away from the media.
I must tell you, what I love about your book is you set the time, historical time, what's happening in politics.
Right.
What's happening in the world. Why did they introduce Latinos into CBS, NBC, and then the talkies, although we had these stars in the silent area? I recommend this book highly, but you also, in an interview that I saw, speak about radio and how important radio. When you were a young girl, they were always listening to radio. Spanish radio has been a big influence on Latinos in the United States and mostly in New York. I feel proud to be part of that community because I know when they worked in the factories, they were all connected. When the new systems came, the Walkman, the recorders, and they worked better because they were paying attention. It's an educational medium, also entertaining. But search this in the Smithsonian, is that correct?
Well, not just the Smithsonian, because their materials were limited at the time. I really did visit lots of institutions. I went to UCLA, I went to USC, which has I went to where the Oscars are produced, which is the motherlode of photos for anybody who's interested in doing work. Yes, photoplay, right. I also went to all of the institutions here in New York.
How long were you researching?
Oh, my books generally take 3 to 5 years to research, to write, and to complete. Yeah.
And not only do you speak of the silent, then you talk about the talkies, and then you talk about Rita Moreno and Miriam Colon. All these fascinating people. I wondered what your next step is.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting question for me. The book that I'm working on right now is a book about. In some ways, it's very similar. I often think that I'm going off in a different direction. I end up in the same place. But this book is about U.S. media in other countries. What it is that people take away from watching U.S. TV. And around the world, regardless of the country, there is a huge amount of consumption of U.S. programming as well as U.S. news. And so I became very interested in that, mainly because I became aware of the fact that this consumption, this
the audience that you have worldwide.
Right, exactly. But I became aware of the fact that this export of U.S. TV was so great that the European Union, for example, Canada as well, they passed legislation that required the companies, the countries rather, and the companies that were showing television it required, speaking of the European Union, required the countries to have 50% or more, at least 50% of programming be domestic programming. So immediately that said to me, my goodness, if they're requiring 50%, that means that it's so much more that is not
That's interesting.
domestic. Yeah.
We're going to have a few shows on different chapters in your books. Let's go for a break, a pause, and we'll continue.
All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yes.